My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and the moment my stepfather said I wasn't his child was the moment I finally understood I'd never been part of his family. It didn't happen during an argument. It didn't happen during a fight or a meltdown or one of those dramatic moments people imagine when families fall apart. It happened while I was passing the gravy. The dining room was warm, almost uncomfortably so, the heat from the oven mixing with the low hum of forced politeness. The table was set the way it always was, gold-rimmed plates, cloth napkins folded into stiff triangles, and the centerpiece my mother insisted on, using every year even though half the candles were melted down to useless stubs. Christmas dinner, the one day a year we pretended everything was fine. My mom, Elaine, 55, sat at the head of the table, her lips pressed into a careful smile that never quite reached her eyes. She spent all day cooking, cleaning, and rehearsing lines in her head, trying to keep the peace, like she always did. My stepfather, Frank, 62, sat to her right, broad-shouldered, confident, already halfway through his second glass of wine. He looked relaxed, comfortable. Like this house, this table, and everyone around it belonged to him. My stepsister Lauren, 26, sat across from me, picking at her food, avoiding eye contact. My stepbrother Kyle, 34, leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the back like he owned the place, which, in Frank's eyes, he did. And then there was me. I sat at the far end of the table. Same seat I'd had since I was 13. I reached for the gravy boat and slid it toward Frank without thinking. My hand brushed the edge of his plate. He looked up at me, not with anger. Not with surprise, with irritation. "Careful," he said sharply. "You're not my child, don't reach over my plate like that." The words landed so cleanly, so casually, it took a second for my brain to catch up. The room went silent, not shocked silence. Not gasping silence. The kind of silence that means everyone heard it and no one planned to stop it. My mother froze. Her fork hovered midair, her knuckles whitening as she gripped it. She didn't say my name, she didn't correct him, she didn't even look at me. Lauren's eyes flicked up for half a second before dropping back to her plate. Kyle let out a small laugh through his nose, like Frank had just told a joke. I sat there, still holding the gravy boat. "Frank," my mom said quietly, not firm, not angry, just tired. "That's not, it's the truth," he interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. I didn't raise her to have manners like that. I felt something crack in my chest, not break, crack. Because this wasn't new, this wasn't even surprising. It was just the first time he'd said it out loud in front of everyone. Frank married my mom when I was 9 years old. My biological father left when I was 3, no calls, no cards, no explanation. Frank knew that when he married her. He knew I was part of the deal. At least, that's what my mom told me. But growing up, it was always clear where I stood. I wasn't punished, I was ignored. I wasn't yelled at, I was excluded. I wasn't grounded, I was forgotten. Lauren and Kyle had college funds. I had student loans. They had family photos with Frank's arm around their shoulders. I stood at the edge, smiling too hard. They were my kids. I was Elaine's daughter. And every year, every holiday, I told myself it didn't matter. Until now, my hands started shaking. I set the gravy down carefully so no one could accuse me of making a scene. "I was just helping," I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. Frank snorted. "Didn't ask you to," that was it. Something in me, something I'd been swallowing for 20 years, finally stood up. I looked at my mother. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. And in that moment, I realized something painful and freeing all at once. No one at this table was going to stand up for me, so I was going to do it myself. I pushed my chair back slowly. The scrape of wood against tile sounded louder than thunder. Frank looked annoyed. "Where are you going? We're not done eating." I met his eyes. "No," I said quietly. "You are." "I'm done pretending." My mom finally looked at me then. Fear flashed across her face. "Sarah, please," she whispered. "Not tonight." I smiled at her, sad but steady. I should have done this years ago. And with that, I picked up my coat and walked away from the table that had never really been mine. The cold hit me the second I stepped outside. December air sliced through my coat like it had teeth, but I welcomed it. It felt honest. Unlike the warmth inside that house, manufactured, forced, suffocating, the cold didn't pretend to be anything else. I stood on the porch for a moment, keys shaking in my hand, listening. No footsteps behind me, no door opening, no one calling my name. I don't know why that surprised me. I drove without a destination, Christmas lights blurring past my windshield, radio off, thoughts loud. Every red light felt like an accusation. Every green light felt like permission to keep going. By the time I pulled into my apartment parking lot, my chest hurt in a way I'd never felt before. Not sharp, not panicked, just heavy. Like I'd finally picked up something I'd been carrying my whole life and realized how much it weighed. Inside, my apartment was dark and quiet. No decorations, no tree. I'd stopped bothering years ago when I realized holidays were just performances I wasn't cast correctly in. I dropped my keys on the counter and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. That's when my phone buzzed. For half a second, hope flared, then I saw the name. Mom. I stared at it until the buzzing stopped. A second later, a text. Please call me. I didn't. Another buzz. You embarrassed him. That one hurt more than I expected. I locked my phone and pressed it face down on the counter like it might burn me. I slept on the couch that night, still in my coat, exhaustion finally dragging me under sometime near dawn. The next morning, the guilt arrived right on schedule. Guilt had always been faster than anger, louder than self-respect. I made coffee, I didn't drink, and stared out my window at the parking lot, while memories lined up in my head like witnesses I'd never called to the stand. Frank correcting the way I held my fork when I was 10. Frank telling me to ask your mother whenever I needed something. Frank attending Lauren's college graduation while sending my mom alone to mine because someone had to watch the house. And the worst one, the one that always came back when I least expected it. I was 16, crying at the kitchen table after a boy broke my heart. Frank had walked in, taken one look at me and said, "Drama doesn't make you special, Sarah. You're not even really mine." He said it like a fact, and I'd swallowed it like one. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lauren, Dad's furious, Mom's crying, "You should apologize," I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. I typed back slowly. For what? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared, appeared again, for walking out, for making a scene. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. He said I wasn't his child. The reply came faster than I expected. He didn't mean it like that. I shut my eyes. There it was. The sentence that had stitched my silence together for decades. He didn't mean it like that, but he always did. Around noon, my mom showed up unannounced. I hadn't heard her knock. I only knew she was there because I heard her key in the lock, the spare she insisted on keeping just in case. She stood in my living room, coat still on. Purse clutched tight against her chest like armor. "Oh good," she said softly. "You're awake." I didn't stand up. "Why are you here?" I asked. Her face crumpled just enough to make me feel like a monster. "I was worried," she said. "You shouldn't have left like that." I waited, she sighed. Frank felt disrespected. There it was again. Frank's feelings, Frank's comfort, Frank's house, Frank's table. "What about me?" I asked quietly. She flinched. "I raised you better than that," she said, and immediately looked like she wished she could pull the words back. "I mean, you know how he is." I stood up then. "No," I said, "I know how you are." Her eyes widened. I took a breath, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "You let him say it, you always have. You let him treat me like a guest in my own life because it was easier than standing up to him." "That's not fair," she whispered. "It's accurate." She sat down heavily on the couch. "You don't understand," she said. "After your father left, I was scared. Frank gave us stability, a home, security." "At my expense," I said. She didn't answer. I walked to the window, then back again like the truth needed momentum. "I spent my whole life trying to earn a place at that table," I said. "Good grades, good behavior, no trouble, no needs." And it still wasn't enough. Tears slid down her cheeks. "I thought if I just kept the peace." "You broke me," I said gently. The silence stretched between us, thick and real. Finally, she said, "He never wanted another man's child." The words landed harder than Frank's had, because this time they came with honesty. "So why did you marry him?" I asked. She looked at me then, really looked. Because I didn't think you'd notice. That was the moment something inside me finally let go, not anger, expectation. I'm not coming back, I said. Her head snapped up. What? For holidays, for dinners, for pretending, I clarified. I love you. But I won't keep shrinking so he can feel big. You're asking me to choose, she said, voice shaking. I shook my head. No, I said. I already did. She left shortly after that, quieter than she'd arrived. This time, when the door closed, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. That night, I packed a box. Photos, old journals. The chipped blue mug I'd taken from my childhood kitchen years ago without realizing why. And at the bottom of the box, something unexpected. My spine. I didn't know yet what walking away would cost me. But for the first time in my life, I knew what staying would have cost. The box sat in the corner of my apartment like it was waiting for me. I hadn't meant to open it yet. I told myself I'd do it when I was ready, when my chest didn't feel so tight, when the anger settled into something manageable. But grief has a way of demanding attention on its own timeline. It was raining outside, the kind of slow, steady drizzle that turns the world gray and quiet. I made tea I actually drank this time and pulled the box closer with my foot. Photos were on top. Birthday parties where my smile looked too big for my face. School pictures where my hair was always pulled too tight, my posture too careful. Frank appeared in some of them, hovering just close enough to look involved without ever quite touching me. I flipped one over. 2004 was written on the back in my mom's handwriting. That was the year before Frank moved in. I froze. Beneath the photos were papers I didn't recognize, yellowed envelopes, folded letters, documents I'd never seen before. My stomach dropped. I pulled one out. It was a birth certificate. Not mine. My hand started shaking as I scanned the names. Father, Michael Reeves, I'd heard that name once. Maybe twice, always said quickly, always followed by silence. I sat down hard on the floor. Michael Reeves, not Frank, not gone, not doesn't matter. A person, I dug deeper, heart pounding now. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my mother, all unopened. The earliest one was dated 2 months after I was born. Elaine, I know you don't want to hear from me, but please let me see Sarah. I don't care how angry you are at me, she deserves to know her father. My throat closed. The next one, I'm not asking for you, I'm asking for her. Another, I'm still sending child support. I'll keep writing until you tell me to stop. My chest burned as I read, because he hadn't stopped. He tried. I didn't realize I was crying until the paper blurred. At the bottom of the box was a manila folder labeled in my mother's neat, careful handwriting. Legal. Inside were court documents, custody filings, requests for visitation, all denied. All uncontested. My mother had never fought because she'd never shown up. I felt sick. I sat there for a long time, surrounded by proof that my life hadn't been abandoned, it had been curated. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Elaine, please call me. I laughed through tears. Of course she wanted to talk now, I called her. She answered on the first ring. Sarah, she said, breathless, why didn't you tell me? I interrupted. Silence. I found the letters, I said. I found everything. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You went through my things. You hid my father from me, I shot back. Don't change the subject. She started crying, full sobs this time. I was trying to protect you, she said. From what? I demanded. From instability, she said. From disappointment. Michael wasn't reliable. He wrote you for years, I said. He went to court. He didn't have money, she snapped suddenly. He didn't have a house like Frank. I needed security. There it was, the same word again, security. I needed a father, I said quietly. She sniffed. Frank didn't want reminders of your past. My existence was the reminder, I said. She didn't deny it. I leaned back against the counter, exhausted. Does Frank know? I asked. There was a pause. Yes, she admitted. From the beginning. My knees almost gave out. He knew my father wanted me, I said. And still treated me like a burden? He was jealous, she said weakly. He said if you had another man in your life, you'd never respect him. So instead, he erased him, I said. And you let him? Her silence was answer enough. I'm going to find him, I said. She gasped. Sarah, please. I'm not asking permission, I said. You took my choice once. You won't do it again." I hung up before she could say another word. It took me 3 hours to work up the courage. I Googled Michael Reeves with shaking fingers, narrowing it down by age, by city, by anything I could remember from the scraps of truth I'd been given. And then I found him. A LinkedIn profile. Graying hair, kind eyes, a smile that looked familiar. Occupation, mechanical engineer location. 2 hours away, my heart slammed against my ribs. I stared at his photo, searching for myself. The curve of the nose, the shape of the mouth, the softness in the eyes. I sent a message, deleted it, typed again, deleted it. Finally, I wrote, "Hi, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I believe you're my father." I pressed send before I could talk myself out of it. The reply came 10 minutes later. "I've been waiting 29 years to hear that." I broke down. Not because I was angry anymore, but because someone, somewhere, had never stopped wanting me. I almost didn't go. I sat in my car for 20 full minutes, engine running, wipers swiping back and forth like they were counting down to something I wasn't sure I could survive. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel, my heart beating so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. What if he didn't look at me the way I needed him to? What if I saw disappointment in his eyes? What if this shattered whatever fragile piece I'd managed to build? I thought of Frank's voice, "You're not my child." Then I thought of Michael's message, "I've been waiting 29 years. I turned off the engine and got out of the car. The diner smelled like coffee and old vinyl booths. The bell over the door chimed when I walked in, too loud, too final. I scanned the room, pulse racing, and then I saw him. He stood up immediately, not hesitantly, not cautiously, immediately. "Sarah," he said, his voice catching on my name like it mattered. I nodded, suddenly unable to speak. He didn't hug me right away. He waited. Like he was afraid to cross a line he'd never been allowed near before. "It's okay," I said finally, and then he pulled me into his arms. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. It was steady. Like he'd been holding space for me his whole life. We sat across from each other, mugs of coffee untouched between us. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The same dimple in the left cheek. The same crease between the brows when concentrating. "I didn't know if you'd come," he admitted. "I almost didn't," I said honestly. He nodded. "I understand." That alone told me everything. He didn't rush. Didn't overwhelm me with explanations or excuses. He let me set the pace. So I asked the question that had lived in my chest since I was 9 years old. "Why didn't you fight harder?" His face crumpled, not defensively, not angrily, just tired. "I did," he said softly. "Until the courts told me to stop, until your mother stopped responding, until Frank's lawyer made it clear I wasn't welcome." My stomach twisted. "I never missed a payment," he continued. "Never stopped writing. I kept copies of every letter. I figured maybe one day." Tears blurred my vision. "I thought you didn't want me," I whispered. He reached across the table, careful again. "Sarah," he said firmly, "I wanted you more than anything." Something inside me loosened. We talked for hours, about my childhood, about his life. About the daughter he imagined I was becoming without ever getting to see. He told me he'd driven by my high school once. Sat in the parking lot and cried, because he didn't know which door I'd come out of. He told me he attended my college graduation, stood in the crowd, invisible, cheering quietly when my name was called. That one broke me. "I was right there," he said. "And you were beautiful," I laughed through sobs. "You're not supposed to say that about your daughter," he smiled. "I've had a lot of time to practice." When we finally stood to leave, I felt lighter and heavier all at once. "I want to be part of your life," he said carefully. "But only if you want that too." I didn't hesitate. "I do." 2 days later, my mother showed up again. This time, she looked panicked. "You met him," she said. "Yes," I replied. Her voice shook. "What did he tell you?" "The truth," I said, "which is more than I can say for you." She sat down hard. "He's going to turn you against us," she said. "No," I said. "You already did that." She stared at me, finally seeing something she didn't like. "Strength." "Frank is furious," she said. "He says if you keep seeing Michael, you're not welcome in our home." I smiled sadly. "I haven't been welcome there in years." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I won't choose," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's why I did." When she left, I called Michael. I don't know how this works, I said. He laughed softly. Neither do I, but I'd like to try, I said. So would I, he replied. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking to belong. I was invited. Control doesn't always look like yelling. With Frank, it looked like silence, like money. Like doors that closed softly but never reopened. The first sign came in the form of an email, not to me, to my workplace. I found out when my manager, Tina, called me into her office with a look that was half confused, half concerned. "Do you have a stepfather named Frank Mitchell?" she asked. My stomach dropped. "Yes," I said slowly. "Why?" She turned her screen toward me. The email was short, polite, poisonous. "I'm concerned about Sarah's emotional stability following a family dispute. She left a holiday gathering in an aggressive manner and has recently been making false claims about her upbringing. I thought it was responsible to alert you in case her behavior affects her work." My hands shook. Tina frowned. "Is there anything we should know?" I took a breath. "No," I said firmly, "but there's something he should." She nodded. "Okay. Then we're done here." I left her office with my head high and my hands clenched into fists. Frank had crossed a line, and he knew it. That night my phone rang. Blocked number, I answered. "Put your mother on," Frank said without greeting. "She's not here," I replied calmly. "You're ruining this family," he snapped. "Running to that man, spreading lies. He's my father," I interrupted. "And the only lie here is the one you built your house on." "You owe me respect," he growled. I laughed, a real laugh this time. "I owe you nothing," I said. "You made that clear years ago. You wouldn't have anything without me," he said. "Your education, your stability." "My debt is paid," I said, "with interest." Silence. Then, quieter, more dangerous. "You think you're safe because he's around now?" Frank asked. "Because some fantasy father showed up." "I think I'm safe because I don't need you," I said. I hung up. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived. A formal email, family meeting. Attendance required. Lauren sent it. "Dad wants to clear the air." I almost deleted it. Then I realized something important. This wasn't for closure. It was for power. And I wasn't going to give it to him. I replied with one sentence. "I'll attend with my father." The response was immediate. "Absolutely not." I smiled. "Then neither will I." The meeting was canceled within the hour. The real blow came when my mother called. "I need you to stop seeing Michael," she said, voice thin. "No," I replied. "He's poisoning you against us," she insisted. "No," I said again. "He's telling me I matter." She started crying. "Frank says he'll leave if this continues." I closed my eyes. And for the first time, I felt pity instead of fear. "That's his choice," I said gently. "Just like staying silent was yours. You're tearing everything apart," she sobbed. "I'm just not holding it together anymore," I replied. That night, I had dinner with Michael. We cooked together, awkward and warm and real. He asked about my job. I asked about his childhood. We laughed when we burned the pasta. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You know, he's scared." I raised an eyebrow. "Men like that," he continued, "build themselves by standing on others. When the person stands up, the structure collapses." I thought of Frank's shaking voice on the phone. "I don't want revenge," I said. Michael smiled. "Then you're already winning." 3 days later, my stepsister Lauren showed up at my door, not angry, not defensive, scared. "He's losing it," she whispered. "Dad, he keeps asking where you are." "What you're saying about him?" I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" She swallowed. "I want to know if what you said is true." I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. Because when lies fall, they don't fall alone. Lauren sat on the edge of my couch like she expected the cushions to bite her. She kept twisting her hands together, knuckles white. Eyes darting toward the door every few seconds like Frank might burst through it at any moment, even though she was 26 and lived on her own. That alone told me more than any words could have. "You're not in trouble here," I said gently. "You can breathe." She laughed weakly. "That's funny." I waited. Finally, she spoke. "He's been like this my whole life," she said quietly. "You just got the worst of it." I didn't interrupt. "He always needed someone to be smaller than him," she continued. "When you left, there was no one left to aim at." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked. She swallowed. "Mark moved out years ago. Mom avoids him. So now it's just him and his anger." I nodded slowly. And you, I said. She flinched. He calls me ungrateful, she said. Says I'm soft, says I wouldn't survive without him. I leaned forward. Do you believe him? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know, she whispered. That was the most honest answer she could have given. She told me things I'd never known, how Frank controlled money, how affection came with conditions, how silence was used as punishment. He never hit us, she said quickly, like she needed to defend him. Just made us feel like we were always one mistake away from being nothing. I nodded. I know that feeling, I said. She looked at me then, not like an enemy, not like a rival, but like someone seeing me clearly for the first time. I thought you were stronger than me, she admitted. You took it without breaking. I shook my head. I broke quietly. We sat in silence, the weight of shared understanding settling between us. Finally, she said, Dad says you turned on him. I smiled sadly. I just stopped turning on myself. Her shoulders sagged. I don't know how to leave, she confessed. You don't have to decide tonight, I said, but you do get to decide eventually. She nodded slowly, like the idea itself was radical. When she left, she hugged me, not stiff, not polite, real. That weekend, Michael invited both of us to dinner. Lauren hesitated. I don't think he'll want me there, she said. He's not like Frank, I replied. And neither are you. Dinner was awkward in the best way. Lauren asked careful questions. Michael answered honestly. He didn't compete, didn't posture, didn't try to replace anyone. At one point, Lauren said quietly, I think my dad hates her because you exist. Michael blinked. Me? Yes, she said, because she proved he was optional. That landed hard. Later that night, my phone rang again. This time, it was Mark. I heard you're telling stories, he said flatly. Come hear them yourself, I replied, or keep pretending. He showed up the next day. Older, tired, guarded, he listened, and then he said something I never expected. I used to envy you. I stared at him. You were the lightning rod, he continued. As long as he focused on you, the rest of us got peace. I felt sick. I didn't know, he said quietly, but I should have. You were a kid too, I replied. We sat there, 3 adults picking through the wreckage of one man's need for control. Frank didn't know it yet, but his family was slipping through his fingers. Not because of me. Because truth doesn't stay buried forever. The invitation arrived in the mail. An actual envelope, thick paper, formal script, my full name printed like a challenge, family dinner. Mandatory attendance, I laughed out loud, mandatory, as if adulthood came with a leash. Lauren texted me a photo of hers. Did you get one too? Yep, I replied. Same threat, nicer font. Mark called that night. He's spiraling, he said. He says this ends now. I leaned against my kitchen counter, calm in a way that would have terrified my younger self. Then it ends, I said. Just not how he thinks. Michael was quiet when I told him. Do you want me there? He asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Not to fight, just to exist. He nodded. Then I'll be there. Frank's house looked the same. Immaculate, controlled, cold. The table was set like a battlefield, perfect symmetry, assigned seats, napkins folded with military precision. My mother stood in the kitchen, hands shaking as she stirred a pot that didn't need stirring. She looked at me like she'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it in equal measure. You didn't have to come, she whispered. Yes, I said softly. I did. Frank entered the room like a general inspecting troops. He stopped when he saw Michael. What the hell is he doing here? Frank snapped. I was invited, Michael said calmly. No, you were. I stepped forward. I invited him. Frank's jaw tightened. This is my house, he said. And this is my life, I replied. He laughed harshly. You think bringing him here changes anything? Yes, I said. It proves you were never in control. We just thought you were. The room went silent. Lauren stood up. I'm done, she said, with the threats, with the fear. Mark followed. Me too. My mother started crying. Frank looked around, confused now. You're choosing her, he demanded. Lauren shook her head. We're choosing ourselves. His face reddened. After everything I've done, you did it for yourself, I said, not us. Michael didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Frank pointed at me, voice shaking with rage. You were never my child. I smiled. I know, I said, and I survived anyway. Something broke then, not me, him. He stormed out of the room, the door slamming so hard the windows rattled. No one followed. We sat at the table, not eating, just breathing. My mother looked at Michael. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "I know." For the first time, the table felt honest. He didn't come back that night. Not for his coat, not for his keys, not to finish the argument. Frank disappeared the way men like him always do, by withdrawing attention and expecting panic to follow. It didn't. The house felt different, not lighter, not peaceful, just still. My mother sat at the table long after the rest of us stood up, her shoulders slumped, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. "He's never left like this before," she said. Lauren glanced at me, then back at her. "That doesn't mean we chase him," she said quietly. Mom flinched. "I don't know how to do this alone," she admitted. Michael spoke gently. "You're not alone." She nodded, but her eyes were still on the door. Frank didn't call the next day, or the next. By day 3, my mother was unraveling. "He won't answer me," she said on the phone. "What if something happened? What if nothing did?" I asked. She went quiet. "He always comes back when he's ready to be forgiven," she said. "And does he ever apologize?" I asked. Silence. Lauren moved out that weekend. No announcement, no confrontation, just boxes. Mark helped her load the car, jaw tight, eyes focused. "I can't stay there," she said to me. "Not anymore." "I know," I replied. "You don't have to." My mother watched from the doorway, wringing her hands. "You're tearing the family apart," she said. Lauren paused. "No," she said gently. "We're stopping the bleeding." Frank resurfaced on day 5, not with an apology, with a lawyer. Papers arrived at the house. Threats, ultimatums. Warnings about outside influence. My mother finally snapped. She called me, voice shaking but resolute. "He says it's him or you," she said. I closed my eyes. "Mom," I said, "that choice has existed my whole life." "I didn't realize it until now," she whispered. "Who are you choosing?" I asked. A long pause. "You," she said. I exhaled. Frank didn't take it well. He sent messages, left voicemails, alternated between rage and pleading. No one answered, and then nothing. He moved out just like that. 20 years of control collapsed into cardboard boxes and an empty driveway. Weeks passed. Therapy appointments were made. Boundaries were set. Old wounds were acknowledged instead of ignored. My mother started saying things like, "I should have protected you," instead of "he didn't mean it." It didn't fix the past, but it changed the future. One evening, sitting on my couch with Michael, I asked the question I'd been afraid of. "Do you ever resent her?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "I resent the choices," he said. "Not the people," I nodded. "I don't want to become bitter," I admitted. "You won't," he said. "You chose truth." The holidays came again. No grand table, no forced smiles, no fear. Just a small dinner, real laughter, and a seat where I finally belonged. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd been editing until there was no one left to perform for. No measuring my tone. No anticipating explosions. No shrinking to fit the mood of a man who thrived on imbalance, just space. And in that space, questions began to surface. Who was I when I wasn't being careful? What did I actually want? Who did I trust when fear wasn't steering the wheel? The answers came slowly. I changed therapists, found one who didn't ask me how to cope with abuse, but how to unlearn it. I stopped apologizing mid-sentence. I started saying no without explanation. Michael became a constant, not overwhelming, not compensating, just present. We had standing coffee dates on Sundays. Sometimes we talked about the past, sometimes we didn't. The absence of pressure made room for something better than reconciliation, relationship. Lauren thrived after moving out. She got louder. Brighter, angrier in productive ways. "Did you know I'm allowed to disagree?" She laughed one night. Mark checked in more than he ever had before. "Turns out I'm not as tough as I thought," he admitted. "None of us were, and that was okay." My mother changed too, not perfectly, but noticeably. She sold the house. "I can't live somewhere that echoes like that," she said. She started therapy. Said words like accountability and boundaries without flinching. One afternoon, she took my hands and said, "I failed you." I didn't forgive her right away. I didn't need to, I just needed honesty. Frank faded, no dramatic ending, no apology arc, just absence. And in that absence, I learned something important. Closure isn't something someone gives you, it's something you stop asking for. On my 30th birthday, Michael gave me a small box. Inside was a photo, him standing outside my high school gym, me walking across the stage in my graduation gown. "I took it that day," he said. "I wasn't sure I'd ever show you." I cried. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I gained. For a long time, I thought survival meant endurance, keeping my head down, swallowing words, convincing myself that being tolerated was close enough to being loved. I was wrong. Survival without dignity is just slow erosion. Walking away didn't make me cruel. Speaking up didn't make me ungrateful. Choosing myself didn't make me selfish. It made me honest. I used to believe family was something you earned. That if I tried harder, stayed quieter, smiled more, needed less, I'd eventually be chosen. But love doesn't work like that. Real love doesn't require auditions. Frank taught me what power looks like when it's fueled by fear. Michael taught me what strength looks like when it's fueled by patience. And my mother, through her failures and her growth, taught me that silence can wound just as deeply as cruelty. If I could speak to the girl I was at 9 years old, sitting at a table that never felt safe, I'd tell her this. You don't have to stay where you're tolerated. You don't have to beg to belong. You don't have to accept scraps and call it family. The moment Frank said, "You're not my child," he was right, but not in the way he meant. I wasn't his to control. I wasn't his to diminish. I wasn't his to erase. I belonged to myself. And the truth is, I always had. I just didn't know it yet.